Just stand up. Stop faking it. My husband's voice, sharp with annoyance, cut through the chaos in my head. I was face down on our hot driveway, a shattered brisket platter bleeding juice into my hair, and Leo was telling me to stop making a scene. His mother, Freya, had spent 3 days decorating for his 35th birthday. My collapse in front of 14 guests was, apparently, the one detail she hadn't accounted for. My name is Judith Santana. I'm 32, a billing coordinator for a chain of vet clinics in Covington, Kentucky. My days are spent ensuring people pay for their golden retriever's dental work, which, for the record, costs more than my own last checkup. But that's a different kind of depressing. Let's rewind about 6 hours. It was a Saturday in June. Freya had transformed our modest 3-bedroom ranch into a Pinterest shrine to a man whose ideal birthday involved a steak and complete silence. There were streamers, a banner, and a cake shaped like a football, a baffling choice, given Leo's only sport was bowling. But Freya had a vision, and questioning it was simply not done. I'd been feeling wrong for 5 months. It started as a faint tingle in my feet, the kind you get from sitting too long. Then it escalated. Crushing fatigue that made my 8-hour shifts feel like marathons, and episodes of blurred vision that would come and go. One night, my legs simply gave out in the shower. I caught myself on the tile wall, heart hammering against my ribs. Every time I mentioned it to Leo, he had the same dismissive response: "You're overthinking it, you're stressed, drink some water." Freya, with a perfectly straight face, declared that young women these days had no stamina. This from a woman who needed a 15-minute break after carrying a bag of dinner rolls from her car. But that Saturday, I was trying. I was carrying the good brisket from the place on Madison Avenue across the driveway toward the backyard gate. Halfway there, my legs just quit. No warning, no stumble. They switched off, like someone had pulled a plug. I went down hard. The platter shattered, and I was left on the scorching concrete, staring at a piece of broken ceramic. Unable to feel anything below my waist, I tried to wiggle my toes. Nothing. Absolute zero. Terror isn't a big enough word for that void. Leo walked over from the grill. He didn't run. He walked. He looked down at me, and his first words weren't, "Are you okay?" They were, "Seriously, Judith?" When I gasped that I couldn't feel my legs, his face didn't register worry. It showed annoyance, as if I'd spilled something on his good shirt. He told me to get up. I was making a scene. I was embarrassing him. What I understand now is that Leo had a narrative. His wife was a hypochondriac, a little dramatic, someone who imagined things for attention. He'd been building that story for months. My sudden, dramatic paralysis didn't fit his schedule of a slow, manageable fade, so he reacted with irritation, which was just panic in a cheap mask. He fell back on the script. "She does this," he said, waving off a coworker who'd instinctively stepped forward to help. "Give her a minute." The guy stopped, stepped back. 14 people, and not one came to help. That's what months of quiet gaslighting buys you. Freya was the loudest, hands on her hips, announcing to the neighborhood that I was pulling a stunt to ruin her son's special day. She'd spent 3 days on a party but couldn't spare 3 seconds for her own daughter-in-law, lying on the ground, unable to move. Lying there, with the smell of smoked meat in my hair and the hot asphalt burning my cheek, 2 thoughts surfaced. First, $1,200 had vanished from our savings account last month. Leo said it was for car repairs. The check engine light on our Mazda was still on. And 3 weeks ago, I'd found a credit card statement I'd never seen before. $7,400 under Leo's name at our address. Bank error, he'd said. He never called them. Then, a siren. Someone had called 911. To this day, I don't know who, but that sound, slicing through the party music and laughter from the backyard, was the only thing telling me I wasn't completely alone. The ambulance arrived at 4:47 p.m. I know because I could see Leo's oversized backyard clock from where I lay. A woman with short brown hair and a face etched with calm stepped out. Her name tag read, Eastman, Tanya. She was mid-40s, with the capable shoulders of someone who'd lifted her share of stretchers. She read the scene not by what was happening, but by what was wrong with it. Tanya knelt beside me, gloves already on. She checked my sensation, my reflexes. I felt nothing below my hips. When her little hammer hit my knee, There was zero response. Not reduced. Nothing. Her face stayed neutral. But her notes got longer. Then she asked about my symptoms. My routine. I mentioned the tea. How the taste had changed about 5 months ago, right when my symptoms started. How Leo made it for me every single night. Her pen didn't pause, but her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Leo hovered, arms crossed, performing the role of the helpful, concerned husband for the paramedic. She's been like this for months, probably stress-related. Can you check her anxiety? Tanya asked him to step back. He didn't. She asked again, her voice calm but firm. This is my driveway. He snapped. She's my wife. Tanya just looked at him for a moment, then repeated that she needed space to work. She wasn't just annoyed. She was cataloging his behavior. A worried husband paces, asks questions, holds a hand. He doesn't stand with his arms crossed, feeding a rehearsed narrative. She calmly radioed for police, citing family member interfering with patient care. Leo heard the word police and stiffened, but Tanya played it cool, standard procedure. Sir, I just need to do my job safely. He backed off, annoyed but not alarmed. In the ambulance, as I stared at the ceiling, Tanya checked my vitals and said something that wasn't medical. You're not crazy. I want you to know that. I almost broke right there. At the hospital, things moved with a quiet urgency I didn't understand. The doctor, a tired-looking young man, listened intently to Tanya's handoff. She'd flagged her report, progressive neuropathy with a timeline matching a dietary change, combined with a spouse whose behavior was inconsistent with genuine concern. She'd recommended an expanded toxicology screen. The doctor agreed, ordering a full MRI and a comprehensive tox panel. Leo showed up 3 hours later. He walked in, didn't ask how I was, didn't look at the monitors. He asked when I'd be released because the house was a mess from the party and his mom was really upset. Then he sat in the corner and scrolled through his phone. I watched my husband, the man I chose, check his bowling league group chat while I lay there paralyzed. And a cold, hard truth settled in my chest. A nurse came in around 9 p.m. She asked the standard question, "Do you feel safe at home?" But she asked it slowly, holding my gaze. I said yes automatically, but the question lodged in my chest like a stone, heavy and immovable. While I lay there with nothing but time and my phone, I logged into our joint bank account. That $1,200 was still there, labeled car repairs, but now, with a new focus, I noticed something else. Small ATM withdrawals, $60 at a time, from a machine in Florence, Kentucky. We don't live in Florence. We don't shop in Florence. I don't know a single person in Florence. And for the first time, I let myself wonder, what if the answer to the nurse's question wasn't the one I'd automatically given? The withdrawals went back 4 months, regular as rent. I didn't sleep that night. Around 6 o'clock a.m., the door opened. The doctor walked in, and behind him were 2 people, a woman in scrubs, the hospital's patient advocate, and a woman in a dark blazer with a badge on her belt. The doctor pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down. That's when I knew. Doctors don't pull up chairs for good news. They pull them up when they need you sitting still for what comes next. The woman with the badge was Detective Alpha Pham, Kenton County PD, mid-40s, no-nonsense haircut. The kind of face that probably hadn't looked surprised since the Clinton administration. She sat in the plastic chair next to my bed like she'd done this 100 times. She probably had. The doctor spoke first. He explained the MRI results carefully, like he was reading a verdict. The scan showed progressive damage to my peripheral nervous system, demyelination of the nerve fibers. In plain English, the protective coating around my nerves was being stripped away. The pattern wasn't consistent with MS. Guillain-Barré, or any autoimmune condition. The pattern was chemical. Something had been destroying my nerves from the inside for months. Then came the toxicology. They found methylene chloride in my blood. If you don't know what that is, I didn't either. It's an industrial solvent, paint stripper, degreaser, the kind of chemical an inventory manager at an auto parts distributor would have access to every single day. The levels in my blood weren't from a single accidental exposure. They were consistent with repeated small-dose ingestion over an extended period. Someone had been feeding it to me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went completely still. You know that feeling when your brain receives information so far outside anything you've ever considered that it just stops processing? Like a computer hitting an error and the screen freezes. That was me. The man I slept beside every night. The man who handed me tea and said, "Good night, babe." Detective Pham let the silence sit, then started asking questions. Methodical. No drama. When did the tea taste change? Who made it? How often? What did Leo do for work? When I said, auto parts distributor, she wrote something down and underlined it twice. She asked about our finances, our relationship, Freya's involvement. She asked if Leo had taken out any insurance policies recently. I said I didn't know. Her expression told me she already suspected the answer. Pham was honest with me. She said the concentration levels, the timeline matching the tea, Leo's occupational access, it all pointed in one direction. But she promised they'd build the case on evidence, not assumptions. And then the evidence started coming fast. They got a search warrant for our house that same day, in Leo's workshop in the garage. Behind a shelf of paint cans and old bowling trophies, they found a half-empty container of industrial-grade methylene chloride. His employer confirmed Leo had been signing out this compound for 6 months, consistently more than his inventory role required. His supervisor never questioned it because Leo had worked there 8 years and was considered reliable. That's the thing about trust, it's the perfect hiding place. The financial forensics hit next. That $7,400 credit card I'd found, the charges traced to 2 things. First, monthly premiums on a $350,000 life insurance policy on me, taken out 7 months ago. Simplified issue, no medical exam required. Which is exactly why Leo chose it. My signature on the application was forged. Second, rent on a studio apartment in Florence, Kentucky, 340 square feet with a view of a Jiffy Lube parking lot, signed 5 months ago under Leo's name. Those ATM withdrawals I'd noticed from the hospital, all within 2 blocks of that apartment. Leo wasn't just trying to collect insurance money, he was building a whole separate life, ready to step into once I was gone. His grand escape plan was a sad studio in Florence with laminate floors. The man really did lack imagination. Then Pham showed me Freya's text messages. Individually, they looked harmless, a mother checking on her son. But in context, they were devastating. She brought up the tea thing again at dinner. Heads up, she scheduled something with a doctor for Tuesday. The party's Saturday, she better not pull anything. Freya wasn't just a difficult mother-in-law, she was surveillance. She was monitoring my suspicions and feeding Leo real-time intelligence. She knew about the tea. She knew what was in it. She helped manage the entire thing. That's the one that broke me, not Leo. I could almost file Leo under greed and cowardice. But Freya was a 63-year-old woman, a mother. She stood over me on that driveway and accused me of faking while she knew exactly why I couldn't move. She watched me deteriorate for 5 months. And her only concern was that I might tell a doctor before the job was finished. My sister Noelle arrived at the hospital that evening. She'd been crying so hard her eyes were nearly swollen shut. She grabbed my hand and said she was sorry for believing Leo. Sorry for that phone call. Sorry for asking if I was okay in my head. She'd been manipulated the same as everyone else. I told her it wasn't her fault. And I meant it. Because when someone lies that well, the people who believe them aren't stupid. They're just human. Before Pham left that night, she paused at the door. She said there was one more thing the investigation turned up. Something about Freya's first husband, Leo's father, a man named Raymond Gutierrez, who died in March of 2011 at age 49. Cause of death, progressive neurological failure of undetermined origin. He'd been sick for approximately 6 months before he died. Tingling, fatigue, loss of motor function. The case was closed as natural causes. Freya was the grieving widow. Pham said she'd requested the old case file from county archives. The symptoms in Raymond's death certificate were almost identical to mine. She let that sit in the air between us. Then she said good night. The next morning, it was 5:52 a.m., still dark. The kind of early where even the birds haven't committed yet. 3 unmarked cars pulled onto Dorsey Avenue and stopped in front of the house where, 40 hours earlier, I'd been lying on the driveway while my husband told me to stop acting. Detective Pham rang the doorbell. Leo opened the door, half asleep. wearing gym shorts and a faded promotional t-shirt from a chili cook-off he'd gone to 2 summers ago. He saw the badge, and his face did something I wish I could have seen in person. Not shock. Fam told me later. Recognition. The look of a man who'd been waiting for a knock he hoped would never come. Leo was arrested on charges of attempted murder by poisoning, insurance fraud, and forgery. He didn't scream. He didn't protest his innocence. He went quiet. Fam told me afterward that this was more common than people think. The ones who planned it usually go silent. It's the innocent ones who yell. Leo said exactly 4 words during his arrest. I want a lawyer. Not, I didn't do it. Not, this is a mistake. He asked for a lawyer the way a man asks for a life jacket when the boat is already underwater. 12 minutes later, 6:04 a.m., officers arrived at Freya's house. She lived 8 minutes away on a street she'd always been proud of, neat lawn, American flag on the porch, the kind of house that says, "Respectable woman lives here." She opened the door in a bathrobe. When she saw the badges, she tried to close it. An officer put his foot in the gap. She was arrested as an accessory to attempted murder. Unlike her son, Freya did yell. She called it a mistake. She said I was a liar. She said her Leo would never do something like this. Her neighbor, Agatha Pellegro, was outside walking her terrier at 6 a.m. because Agatha was that kind of neighbor and saw the whole thing. Agatha, the same woman Freya had bragged to for a decade about what a wonderful, devoted son Leo was. No cameras, no reporters, no courtroom scene, just badges, handcuffs, and 2 people who thought they'd never get caught being put into the back of separate cars on a quiet Tuesday morning. That's how justice actually works. It's not dramatic, it's early, and it's permanent. In custody, things fell apart fast for both of them. They'd initially hired the same attorney, but within a week, he dropped them both. Conflict of interest. Because their defenses were going to contradict each other. Leo's angle, my mother pressured me into it. Freya's angle, I had no idea what he was doing. Those 2 stories can't both be true, and an attorney can't argue both in the same courtroom. So now they each needed separate lawyers, cheaper ones, because all their assets had been frozen. Leo was denied bail, the forged insurance policy, the secret apartment, the signed-out solvents, it all added up to premeditation and flight risk. He sat in the Kenton County Detention Center wearing orange instead of that chili cook-off t-shirt. Freya's bail was set at $500,000. She couldn't post it. She sat in a holding facility 12 minutes from her son, and neither of them could contact the other. But the real blow came when Fam visited me at the hospital for the last time. She had the old case file. Raymond Gutierrez, Leo's father, Freya's first husband, died in March 2011 at 49. The medical records describe 6 months of progressive neurological deterioration, tingling, fatigue, muscle weakness, eventual organ involvement. No toxicology was ordered at the time. It was 2011. He was a middle-aged man with no known enemies, and his wife was a cafeteria supervisor. Not exactly a crime suspect. The case was closed as undetermined natural causes. Nobody looked twice until now. Fam told me the district attorney had authorized a full reinvestigation, including the possibility of exhumation if the forensic toxicologist found enough reason in the old medical records. She was careful. She said this didn't mean Freya definitely killed Raymond, but the pattern was there. Same symptoms, same timeline, same household, and the implication hit me like a truck. If Freya did this before, then she didn't just help Leo, she taught him. The tea, the microdoses, the patience, the gaslighting. This wasn't a son's idea that his mother assisted with. This was a mother's method passed down like a recipe. The most terrifying family tradition I'd ever heard of. Leo, who stood over me and told me to stop faking it, was now sitting in a cell where he couldn't go anywhere at all. And Freya, who accused me of seeking attention, was getting more attention than she'd ever wanted, from a grand jury. With the poisoning stopped, my body started fighting back. The neurologist explained it to me straight. Peripheral nerves can regenerate, but slowly, about an inch per month. Some of the damage from 5 months of methylene chloride exposure might be permanent. I might always have some numbness in my feet. I told her I could live with that. I was alive, which was more than Leo had planned for. The first 2 weeks were the hardest. Not physically, emotionally. I lay in that hospital bed processing the fact that my husband had been trying to kill me with my own bedtime tea. That's not something they make a greeting card for. There's no, "Sorry your spouse tried to poison you," section at Hallmark. Though honestly, there probably should be. It'd sell better than you'd think. But my body was healing. Sensation came back to my upper legs first, this warm, prickly feeling like blood returning to a limb that fell asleep, then my knees, then my shins. After 3 weeks, I stood up for the first time in the hospital corridor. 4 steps. Noelle was beside me, holding my arm, crying again. But this time, the good kind. 4 steps doesn't sound like much, but when the last time you were on your feet, you were collapsing onto a driveway while your husband rolled his eyes, 4 steps feels like crossing a finish line. I kept walking. 5 steps the next day, then 12, then the length of the hallway. The physical therapist said I was ahead of schedule, which I appreciated because I have never once in my life been ahead of schedule for anything. My legs weren't perfect. They shook. The left one was weaker than the right, but they worked. They held me up, and nobody was standing over me telling me to stop faking it. The legal side moved faster than I expected. Leo faced charges of attempted first-degree murder, assault, insurance fraud, and forgery, 15 to 25 years. His employer fired him immediately and handed over complete records of every solvent sign-out for the past 2 years. Turns out corporations cooperate very quickly when the alternative is being named in a poisoning case. Leo's cheaper replacement attorney tried to negotiate a plea. The DA wasn't interested. Freya was charged as accessory to attempted murder. The 2011 investigation into Raymond's death was active. A forensic toxicologist was reviewing the original medical records, and the DA's office had filed for potential exhumation. If those charges landed, Freya's situation went from bad to catastrophic. Her replacement attorney advised her to cooperate. She refused, insisted she was innocent, insisted she didn't know what Leo was doing with the tea. The text messages on her phone said otherwise, and text messages don't change their story under pressure. The $350,000 insurance policy was voided immediately. The forged signature alone was a separate felony. My divorce attorney filed for emergency dissolution and full asset seizure. Under Kentucky law, when a spouse commits a felony against you, the court doesn't split things down the middle. It splits them in your direction. The house, the savings, everything in the joint accounts, mine. The $1,200 Leo stole for car repairs, mine. Total assets recovered, roughly $187,000, including house equity. Not a fortune, but every single dollar was mine. I sold the house 2 months later. I didn't want to live on a street where I'd been face down on the driveway while 14 people watched. I found a small apartment in Newport, Kentucky, 12 minutes from Noelle. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a kitchen with enough counter space to make my own tea, and a window that gets afternoon sun. I went back to work at the clinic. Same commute, same invoices, same golden retriever dental claims, but I make my own tea now, and some nights, I skip it entirely, just because I can. I adopted a one-eyed cat from the clinic, Orange Tabby, missing his left eye from an infection before he was rescued. I named him Verdict. I know it's a little on the nose. I know it's the kind of name that makes people smile and shake their head. I don't care. He sits on my lap every evening in that apartment in Newport, purring like a small engine, and he doesn't care what his name is, he just cares that someone chose him. Sometimes the people who scream at you to stand up are the same ones who put you on the ground, and sometimes you have to fall all the way down before you finally see who's really standing over you.